knowledge on the Industrial Revolution during the 1700s is little, so I shall tell you exactly what, when, where, why, and how everything happened the way it did during that time. We know that the Industrial Revolution was the rapid development of industry that occurred in Britain in the late 18th and 19th centuries, brought about by the introduction of machinery. It was characterized by the use of steam power, the growth of factories, and the mass production of manufactured goods. Now that is the Industrial Revolution in a nutshell. But what I'll be explaining is why Britain led the way in the revolution. That's right, Britain. Why Britain? Why Britain? Well, during the 1750s, the Industrial Revolution revolutionized all aspects of life and how it was lived. It led to the great technological inventions we have today. London streets were the first places ever to start the transition to become a more industrialized place. But why? What were the reasons for this? Well, for starters, Britain possessed a lot of both natural and human resources. Britain also had large supplies of coal to power steam engines and iron to build machinery, such as the steam engine itself. Another reason that Britain was the leader in the revolution was because of having a large number of workers to mine coal and build factories. And this was because of the population boom that happened around the 17 to 1800s, which increased the population of the world from about 250 million to 1 billion. As we can see from the graph. Another reason for Britain being the leader in the revolution was capital and demand. But what is capital and demand? Well, capital, it just means wealth or money. Rich business class invested their capital or money into enterprises such as mines, railroads, and factories. And demand just means demand. And so entrepreneurs used their capital or money provided by the rich business class and produced whatever they produced to reach the demand. And that's why Britain used capital and demand and produced all their products. Also, because many entrepreneurs were religious people, they were always hardworking and thrift, as it was due because of their religion. The age of iron and coal. To build the machines and steam engines, a large supply of iron was needed. But to make high-quality iron meant using up large amounts of fuel. Wood fuel was mainly the source of fuel, was the thing. Before the 1700s, but during the 1700s, coal became the main source of fuel. Abraham Darby first experimented with coal so he could produce fuel. He made a discovery that ultimately saved a lot of lives. He found out that coal gave off impurities that can be dangerous to both the user of the iron and the iron itself. Although he still managed to find out a way to remove these impurities and produce high-quality iron top-notch. His grandson, Abraham Darby III, built the world's first iron bridge. More uses of iron were also used later, like being the main material in railroads. Revolutionary changes in the textile industry. That is right, you've heard it. In the 1600s, cotton cloth became very popular. It was outgrowing almost every business there was. So, British merchants started making cotton cloth industries. Soon, they started their businesses and were making lots and lots of money. Millions. This was their system. Raw cotton imported from India would be distributed to peasant families who spun it into thread and wove it into cloth. Then the cloth would be sold for money, although this method was slow and unproductive compared to the large demand of cotton. And so British inventors invented machines. Now they thought for like many times. And they invented machines that just made this job much more easier, productive, and efficient. Things were invented like Kay's flying shuttle. This device works so fast that weavers outpaced the spinners. Unbelievable, but yes, that is what happened. James Hargreaves also invented the spinning jenny in 1764. This device spun multiple threads at the same time and so fixed the problem of the weavers outpacing the spinners. To speed up the spinning even more, Arkwright invented the water frame, which used water power to spin the cotton into thread. The old system of manufacturing cloth was omitted and never to be used again because the new system produced high quality material in a very short amount of time. And to speed up the process even more, manufacturers started to build factories. And those factories were powered by water and steam, and they included everything you just heard, from Kay's flying shuttle to the spinning jenny and to Arkwright's water frame. And those were the first few signs of the Industrial Revolution. That is right, people, we're back, and we're moving on to the revolution in transportation. That is right, you've heard it from the man right here. The production of all products was increasing in both size and quantity, and so entrepreneurs and manufacturers needed an easier yet cheaper way to transport their products from place to place. Manufacturers started using turnpikes or private roads that charged a fee to travelers who used them. Their main job was to decrease traffic for the transporters, but they weren't enough. They weren't good enough at all. The main invention that revolutionized transportation was the steam locomotive. That's right, as we can see from the picture. It allowed travelers to travel long distances in very short amounts of time compared to the traveling techniques used back then. As we can see from the picture yet again, it is a machine with many complicated twists and different parts. But ultimately, when you put them all together, it worked. So it did the job. The knowledge of the steam locomotive was also later used on ships. In 1807, Robert Fulton went up the Hudson River with the Clermont, the ship he used, which was used by a steam engine going on a record-breaking 5 miles per hour. 5 miles per hour. Soon after, the wooden ships were also replaced by ships with iron hulls, and that allowed people to carry 10 to 20 more tons of cargo, which really ultimately allowed people to increase their productivity and range, and really brought a broad range of customers and consumers into their business. But now we're looking ahead. And when you look ahead in this business, we know that the Industrial Revolution really triggered a chain reaction. As demands increased, machines were invented to produce large amounts of goods more efficiently. Prices dropped as more goods became available, which also increased affordability and created more customers and consumers. The Industrial Revolution did not only change the way goods were produced, but also changed people's lives. And that's what really happened. And that is not the Industrial Revolution in a nutshell. Thank you. It's been the news. I've been your host, Parson Multimillion. Bye. Here is a YouTube video that might help you understand the revolution even more if you have not done so yet.
For 15,000 years, most humans never owned or used a single item made outside of their communities. You have electricity, Industrial Revolution. Blueberries in February, Industrial Revolution. You live somewhere other than a farm, Industrial Revolution. You drive a car, Industrial Revolution. You get 12 years of free formal education, Industrial Revolution. Your bed, your antibiotics, your toilet, your contraception, your tap water, your every waking and sleeping second, Industrial Revolution. Here's one simple statistic that sums it up. Before the Industrial Revolution, about 80% of the world's population was engaged in farming to keep itself and the other 20% of people from starving. Today, in the United States, less than 1% of people list their occupation as farming. So what happened? Technology. Here's my definition. The Industrial Revolution was an increase in production brought about by the use of machines and characterized by the use of new energy sources. And the Industrial Revolution began around 1750, and it occurred across most of the Earth, but it started in Europe, especially Britain. What happened? Well, let's go to the thought bubble. The innovations of the Industrial Revolution were intimately interconnected. Like, look for instance at the British textile industry. The invention of the flying shuttle by John Kay in 1733 dramatically increased the speed of weaving, which in turn created demand for yarn, which led to inventions like the spinning jenny and the water frame. Soon these processes were mechanized using water power until the steam engine came along to make flying shuttles really fly in these huge cotton mills. And all these factors came together to make more yarn that could be spun and bleached faster and cheaper than ever before. So the problem here is that with industrialization being so deeply interconnected, it's really difficult to figure out why it happened in Europe, especially Britain. And that question of why turns out to be one of the most contentious discussions in world history today. For instance, here are some Eurocentric reasons why industrialization might have happened first in Europe. There's the cultural superiority argument that basically holds that Europeans are just better and smarter than other people. Sometimes this is formulated as Europeans possessing superior rationality. By the way, you'll never guess where the people who make this argument tend to come from, unless you guess that they come from Europe. And then others argue that only Europe had the culture of science and invention that made the creation of these revolutionary technologies possible. Another argument is that freer political institutions encouraged innovation, and strong property rights created incentives for inventors. And finally, people often cite Europe's small population, because small populations require labor-saving invention. Dear steam engine, you know what's crazy? You've never really been improved upon. Like this thing, which facilitates time travel, probably runs on a steam engine. Almost all electricity around the world, whether it's from coal or nuclear power, it's just a steam engine. It's all still just water and heat, and it speaks to how truly revolutionary the Industrial Revolution was, that since then, it's really just been evolution. Best wishes, John Green. So you may have heard any of those rationales for European industrialization, or you may have heard others. The problem with all of them is that each time you think you're at the root cause, it turns out there's a cause of the root cause. Well, Europeans, specifically the British, had two huge advantages. First, coal. When you trace the story of improved transportation or communication or industrial efficiency or better chemical manufacturing, it always comes back to coal, because the Industrial Revolution was all about using different forms of energy to automate production. And England had large supplies of coal that were near the surface, which meant that it was cheap to mine, so it quickly replaced wood for heating and cooking and stuff. So that encouraged the British to look for more coal. The only problem with coal mining, aside from it being, like deadly and everything, is that the coal mines flooded all the time. I guess coal mining is also a little problematic for the health of the planet. But because there was all this incentive to get more coal out of the ground, steam engines were invented to pump water out of the mines. And because those early steam engines were super inefficient, they needed a cheap and abundant source of fuel in order to work, namely coal, which meant they were much more useful to the British than anyone else. So steam engines used cheap British coal to keep British coal cheap, and cheap British coal created the opportunity for everything from railroads to steel, which, like so much else in the Industrial Revolution, created a positive feedback loop.